Next, I would like to call Mr. Tom Lee of Restorative Justice Partners.
Hi everybody, today I'm not talking on behalf of Restorative Justice Partners, probably more accurately from the Jail Coalition. But I do want to talk about restorative justice, which is what Deshaun was just talking about. Restorative justice is about healing people and relationships. And a wonderful application is to crime, because that's a wonderful place to start. And I'm going to tell you today, since I don't have a whole lot of time, a real key to restorative justice. If you just remember this one thing about restorative justice, it's going to really unfold for you. But I wanted to talk just for a minute about what all of us have grown up with, which is what I call traditional justice, or retributive justice, or coercive justice. That's the justice where you have to do whatever it is. You have to pay the fine of $300. You have to have the 3-year sentence. You have to appear on December 15th at 3 p.m. in the afternoon in Salinas. They make the rules. You follow the rules. So it's coercive or compelling. You have to do it. You have no choice. The interesting thing about it is even if you break no laws and have never broken a law and you stop at all traffic signs, the system still calls you whenever it wants to, and you're compelled to appear. Can people tell me what the example of that is?
The jury.
Jury duty, yeah. And jury duty is you have no choice. Sometimes I like the idea of restorative jury duty where they have to convince you to come in. And maybe if they do that, you would do a better job. But I wanted to read you the pen.
And you record the interaction. Do you want me to stay here? And you record what it is that you're seeing with the police. So even if you're seeing somebody giving like a traffic ticket or something like that, you know, just record them, let them know that you're on, let them know that you're watching them. And what happens is after you press end, a copy of the video is automatically uploaded to the ACLU server, and you'll be prompted to fill out a survey. So you can fill out the things that Michael was talking about, like the officer's badge number, their name, everything like that, and folks at the ACLU will be reviewing it to decide, you know, if what happened was outside of the law and, you know, if there's legal action that should be taken. But there's also a copy of the video that saves on your phone. So if you want to upload it to social media, or if you want to have it for your own records, it's there as well. Another good thing about the app is it has a little icon down here that says rights, and it's the ACLU's full database of know your rights. So you know your rights in talking to the police, if you're being arrested, immigration rights, everything. It's all in here. So the app is something that we're using in developing our rapid response networks. So what we want to do is build up the communities so that they can respond when an incident of police brutality happens, or if somebody is arrested or something like that. You know, the idea is that we have emergency preparedness for something like an earthquake or a tornado or something like that. But what happens much more often is people being harassed, abused, and unfortunately killed by the police. And we don't have teams that are in place to respond to that. So our rapid response networks would carry out a few different functions, like investigating what happened, supporting the family, getting them in touch with whatever resources they might need, you know, advocating on behalf of the family, helping with legal resources, you know, fundraising, all of that, whatever it is that the family might need, we want our rapid response networks to be doing those things. And then another part of the justice teams is organizing. Y'all have some great organizers here in Monterey County that are pushing for reform in the jails. So we want to empower all of the communities that we're working in to kind of all come together and get everybody's work on the same page, focusing on a specific campaign of justice reinvestment. Reinvesting law enforcement funds that are, you know, in the police departments, in the prisons, in the jails, and put that back into the community, and really reframing what public safety actually is. Because right now when you talk about public safety, that means what? Police, prisons, jails. California's public safety budget is $10 billion a year, billion with a B, and all of the money goes to police, prisons, and jails, not community resources, Not education, not access to drug treatment or mental health, unless it's inside of a jail, then they're all about providing it, but we want those services to be in the communities. So that's something else that the justice teams will be doing, is empowering local organizers to push for those campaigns in their counties. And then the last two aspects is we want to have legal support and aid. So we want to have a team of pro bono attorneys who are ready to go in case anybody in the community might need the support for whatever reason, and healing justice practitioners. So that can be alternative healers, traditional cultural healers, that can be art, music, dance, it can be social workers, it can be counselors. But the thing is, when you live in a low-income community of color that is over-policed and overly incarcerated, you have a lot of trauma that often goes unaddressed. So that is a key component that we want to make sure we're including with our justice teams. So if anybody is interested in becoming a part of that, I can give you my information, or maybe I can even get a sign-up sheet, get your information, and let you know how the process is working as we're developing our justice teams in Monterey County. The last thing I wanted to mention is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is my husband is incarcerated here at Soledad State Prison. He received a 10-year sentence for a crime where he did not hurt anybody, and he was facing multiple life sentences, but y'all know how it is being black in this country. So despite everything that he's gone through, he has decided to take like all of his pain and all of his struggles and do something positive with it. So to that end, he recorded an album from prison called Forgotten But Not Gone. The single, some of you guys might have heard, is called 28 Hours, in reference to the fact that a black person is killed by police, security, or vigilantes in the United States every 28 hours. So his music challenges gang culture, it challenges state violence, it challenges patriarchy, and it slaps. It's tight too, and I'm not just saying that because I'm married to him. So I have a few copies here if anybody is interested. I think it's really important that we support our folks who are on the inside, especially the ones who are trying to do something really good with a terrible situation that they've been given. So they're $10 each. Hit me up if you're interested, and I'll be available to answer any other questions later. Thanks.
And I believe that concludes our speaking portion of the event. So now it's time for eats and random discussion, or game discussion, however you want to say it. But most importantly, let's eat. We have Chipotle and some other homemade cuisines in the back.
Thank you. And I want to share that we can also have this also for the questions and answers. But some of the questions presented, like to our assemblyman, he's gone. But we have someone that needs to work on, she can answer. Diana Vargas, she can answer for that. And then we have some of the questions that were presented to the attorney, he's gone. But if there's some kind of way we can answer any of those questions. Once you grab your food, come on back in here and we can just have a discussion, get to know one another. So glad everyone came. Thank you so much. Thank you, Miriam. We have some people up here that are familiar with some of the issues we talked about, and they're on the panel to answer any questions from this event. And so there are questions that we have that some of them can't answer, like Michael and we have Michael, Kaina, we have, say your name. I ain't gonna mess it up. Daishan, say your name.
Jacqueline Simon.
Jacqueline Simon. So we have, say your name. What's your name? What's her name? Okay, I'm slipping, y'all. So you are there up here, and if you have any questions, we're just gonna ask them. Okay, they have a card that they're gonna address. You can pass it to each one.
So some people wrote questions, and if we get through this before, people still want to have more of an informal conversation, we can probably do that after. But we're just going to read through some of these questions and let people up here answer them. So I'll just start with there's a couple questions addressed to Assemblymember Stone, and the rest are all kind of open. So I'll just kind of go through these and get everyone to speak. So the first question is, it was addressed to Assemblymember Stone, but I think Kaina, since she actually worked for his office last year, she could probably answer this. Is there a way to remove the felon label from people returning from prison? No.
All right. Did the person who asked this question, are they here? Okay, that's fine. I think that when you ask the question, is there a way to remove the felon label from a person returning from prison? That can mean a lot of different things. That can mean actually get the felony taken off of your record, or, yeah. I'm just waiting for folks to have their attention up here. Thank you. Or it could mean like the stigma associated with, being convicted of a felony and having done time in prison. In terms of removing your felony, after Prop 47 passed, there are actually 6 crimes that were formerly considered felonies that can now be reclassified down to misdemeanors. So if one of the things that you have been convicted of falls under Prop 47, then you should contact the local legal advocate or somebody like Lamont, like community folks who are doing work to help folks change their records. You need to get access to your rap sheet and find out what it is that it actually says on there to do that. And then I'm not 100% familiar with the process of record expungement. Are you, Jacqueline?
A lot of times, hello, good afternoon. I'm Jacqueline Simon. I'm the founder of Transitions for Recovery and the Entry Program. It's a nonprofit organization that actually works to help and assist individuals have a second chance. Because everybody deserves one. I mean, really, all of us have probably done something in our lives that we probably needed to have a second chance. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
And our students that come through our programs are constantly having problems with issues on this level. So if you are interested in knowing more about your commitment offense or someone you may know that has a commitment offense and they're not sure if they qualify for Proposition 47, I will give you my card. I have several up here. Just come and talk to us. Come to our classroom, and we have all the paperwork right there. Plus, I have a number of individuals that works directly with us to work with parolees and probationers, especially the probationers, in order to have their records reduced to misdemeanor, from felony to misdemeanor. One of the main reasons why people tend to become incarcerated is one thing. Anybody name what it is?
Violations?
Well, the violation of,
They don't have the knowledge or.
actually I believe knowledge probably is the main thing, but it's drugs. And if you have a drug problem, you should not be put in jail or prison. You should be allowed a program to learn why you continue to try to mask your feelings and your pain, because that is what it is. I have 30 years in this field. I'm a 4th-generation criminal justice professional in my family. All of my both two older brothers and my father and I believe that individuals deserve a second chance, and most times it's related to not having the knowledge, as Ms. Smith just mentioned, as well as just having a problem because you are trying to mask all that pain that you've been going through. So in our program, I'm so happy to report that we have a 94% success rate of probationers that are referred to us from the Seaside area. So can we clap for that? Seaside? 72% for Salinas, and we know what all is going on over there, and that's good. We should clap for them too. And lastly, Sean has been a graduate of our program several times and done so well. What we do is we promote individuals that do well in the program. He could come in and teach our class and our people that have this experience. So please hear me when I say this gentleman sitting right here on this panel is awesome. And he helps us help others break that cycle, and that is what it is. So if you need help and assistance with working on, or if you have someone that wants to know if they can reduce that record to a misdemeanor, come get my card, call me, and we'll set up a time to meet with you. I can even connect you with an attorney that works with us. She's going to be at our office tomorrow. And I'll tell you a little bit about that at the end of our session here today. But she'll be there tomorrow, and what she does is help people with the paperwork. A lot of times people don't want to fill out the paperwork because it is a certain amount. But let's do it. Don't give up on that. We'll help you with that. All right?
Well, Steve, we're going to get to the written questions, then we can ask.
I just had a comment on this.
Okay, real fast.
I sent a note to the President and Sam Farr and a whole bunch of other folks that we should decriminalize the use of drugs. Use the money we spend on incarceration and enforcement to set clinics where an addict can get their fix. Because there's no profit to be made from drugs and there's no reason to get anybody else started. And lots of poor people have died smuggling and selling them and died from using them. And if my neighbor wants to use drugs, it doesn't hurt me unless he has to rob me to get the money to buy them.
So, can I respond to that? Do you mind?
It was actually a question, I think, so it
Was
was
it?
good enough to.
Well, let me make sure and I appreciate you because you're always at the Board of Soups. You're always talking about reentry and supporting people. So I thank you for your commitment to always showing up and asking questions. This is a good question. And I'm just going to keep it real. This is what I do in our programs, and sometimes people don't want to hear it. But I have to, honestly, I'm a Christian. I can't do it any other way. I have to be honest with you. I worked in this field for 28 years. I did a study, 64 months of, can everybody hear me? Can you all hear me? Oh, okay. 64 classes, averaging 20 parolees that came through it, all in Monterey County. 64 classes, averaging 20 people, sometimes up to 24. We asked them a blind survey. Should drugs, particularly marijuana, be decriminalized? 64 classes said, no, Miss Simon, because that's how I started. And it was a gateway drug for me from there, and I went on to something else when times got harder, when times were worse. So, a responsible adult that understands to continue to use, and then when you don't use that anymore and you go to another drug that you may feel helps you better, deal with the response, the masculine, the hurt, the pain, because that's what a lot of people are doing. I guess that adult, it's up to them. But I'm talking about experts in the field of how they started. Marijuana was the first thing they used. And we're talking thousands of people. So we need to be mindful of that. I'm an elected official in this county, and we had a meeting once where we had 18 people in the room. All of them are pretty high-level officials. They asked us to support the decriminalization of marijuana or not. 16 people voted to pass it, to decriminalize it. Myself and one other person chose not to, and I said this very thing. If we're going to do it, and it's probably going to happen anyway, within 3 years, I believe, we need to have programs set up for all of those that are going to get in the system using drugs to the level that they need help and assistance. Because I guarantee it's going to happen. People just don't use drugs, even if it's marijuana or something on that level, and just say, okay, I've had enough. Those students, 20 times 64, for 6 years, I say 6 years, said that's the gateway drug. So what I think we need to do is, because it's going to be decriminalized, people are going to be able to go and buy it next door, up the street. We need to educate them. We need to educate people, educate the community of what's going to happen when that occurs. So at the end of the day, that it is about taxes. It's really not about the humanitarian level of thing. I work with a lot of vets that return from Desert Storm and other places, and marijuana helps them to relax and calm down. I want them to have that if that helps them. There's elderly people that needed to, for when they have glaucoma or cancer, there are other areas that I believe are the responsible adults, and they should be able to utilize it. But I just say we need to control it. We need to be able to have programs set up to attach to the laws that relate to allowing that to be used by anyone. My last comment on this is, of those 64 classes, and the majority of those individuals that came to my program, parolees, when they tested positive, they were testing positive for marijuana that was laced with methamphetamine, which in my opinion is one of the worst drugs there is. I've worked in the field a long time. I've seen that take people down like that. It doesn't take, we're talking poisons. There's 302 poisons in that drug. And everybody tries to lace in a little bit more in their drug so they can sell it, and everybody believes it's popular and good. So as I said in the beginning, I'm sorry if that's something that hurts people, because quite frankly, marijuana seems like something they think is harmless. But I'm just giving you the anecdotal information from that many people that are in the system, as well as what's happening with some marijuana today. It's not all of it. Maybe if it's controlled, and some of the, programs that may have it, or programs that are working on starting businesses here when it is legalized. But you've got to be careful. People will find a way to make a profit. Thank you.
I just want to push back against that a little bit, if I can. And I think it's good that you pointed out that that was anecdotal evidence.
Yes.
Because the statistical evidence actually shows the exact opposite. Like, for example, in Portugal, they decriminalized all drugs, and they it wasn't just like, oh, everybody can go do drugs and do whatever you want, but they changed the way that they approached it. Instead of treating it as a public safety issue or a criminal issue, they treated it as a public health issue. So they implemented that in 2002, and in 13 years since then, they've closed down half of their prisons, and they've slashed their drug addiction rates in half, because they've been treating it as a public health issue and not as a criminal issue. Because the fact is that, especially in federal prisons, the majority of the folks who are there are for some drug-related crime, for having it, for using it, for selling it, whatever that may be. And the fact is that, what people are using, it's because they're trying to self-medicate, and it's because we don't have the resources in our communities. And I agree with you completely that, folks should be educated about, the real implications of drug use, and folks should have a place to go if they do have a problem misusing, abusing drugs, or whatever it may be. So if you just actually change what we need to do from the top down and from the bottom up, is change our focus, how it is that we're looking at drugs. Are we looking at it as a public safety issue that needs to be criminalized, or are we looking at it as a public health issue? And are we dealing with drugs by having more police officers and building more jails and building more prisons, or are we dealing with drug use by building strong families and strong communities and providing access to healthcare and affordable housing and affordable and good paying jobs? Most people end up using drugs because of, some depression or something like that, which can be prevented if they live in a safe and healthy community. Or people sell drugs because they don't have a job, or, they can't pay their rent on minimum wage, so they end up selling drugs on the side. So I know I'm talking more than I should be, but what we at the Miller Baker Center, we have this analogy where we look at the way we deal with crime as like a triangle, as a pyramid. So the bottom portion of the pyramid, which is the largest portion, we believe that most folks can be treated with economic opportunities. So if they have a job, if they have good education, they have good, safe, healthy community, they won't end up causing harm. The middle part is restorative justice. So then there's another group of folks who, even if they have an economic opportunity, they still caused harm. It can be fixed with restorative justice, where they actually repair what they did instead of just being punished for it, and there's no accountability really at all. And then there's just like the very small top of the pyramid where economic interventions and restorative justice interventions didn't work. And there's something else that you need to figure out. But the problem is our criminal justice system treats everybody like they're in that top part of the pyramid, when really we're not trying the economic opportunities and the restorative justice practices primary first to mitigate that.
So there's this question. We have a lot of questions, but we're getting really close to 5 o'clock. So I'm thinking we'll finish up this last. We'll finish up this last question, and then maybe see how people feel. We can have a whole discussion after that. So I think this question really encapsulates a common idea, and so I think maybe each of us could just briefly speak on this. But I think it's pretty open enough where we could each kind of express how we feel about it. So this question is, how can the police regain credibility? And I'm just gonna start with this one, and then so I'm just gonna, since I just read the question, and then I think we can just go down. And I think first of all, because I just want to put this in a historical context. I think the idea of regaining credibility, I think implies that they ever had credibility. But, I mean, if we, like, you know, I think we need to be really open and honest about the function of the police, and the historical creation of the police. So, you know, really briefly, police started in the United States in a couple ways. In the South, police became formalized slave catchers. They were informal before, and they were probably, I don't know how, you know, who they were paid by and all that. But eventually they were actually formalized as police forces. And in the North, they were basically formalized to prevent strikes, riots, and other things, collective actions by poor people and working people. So ever since the beginning, they've been designed to control populations of people who are needed to fulfill certain functions so that certain people can be rich. And off of people's labor and off of people being under control. So I think that's just some historical context to put it in. And that I just want to put out the position here that there are, you know, there's two questions. There's two main approaches to this question. Is, do we want to reform the police to make them better, or do we actually want to get rid of them and create alternatives to policing in prisons and courts that are based on violence, like Tom Lee talked about, a punitive model, which implies that people have to be walking around with guns or at least weapons of some kind. I mean, even England and Japan don't even have hardly any guns with their cops, but they still commit violence, and they still capture people and cage them, like, you know, human beings being imprisoned in a cage. So there's that idea. Do we want to reform that and make it a little better? Do we want them to have tasers that are called less lethal weapons? I mean, or do we want to get rid of people walking around with weapons, and then we want to use our kind of restorative justice model? That doesn't exclude the possibility of learning like self-defense and other ways to keep people safe from immediate harm. But anyway, so those are the two approaches I see: either reforming it or actually coming up with an alternative. So I just want to put that into context, and maybe each of our panelists could speak to it on their own, how they feel about this idea. So how can the police regain credibility with all the kind of like background that, you know, you kind of are aware of?
Well, I like to take that opportunity. I said a week and a half ago or so, my name is Dyson. I got an opportunity to go up to Sacramento to sit on the BSCC board, and it was a group before us that was a little radical, which I understand because it was dealing with this, with money going back into prison. They were very upset, and they rocked the place. You know, they just literally done it. They stayed within the boundaries of the rules, and they did the little thing, but afterwards, they got wild, which was good. So it ended. Now that opened the door for us to come in and speak about Prop 47 and things of this nature. And one thing I learned when I got up and spoke, and you know, you know, from I got a higher power, you know, because I'm so happy. I have so much to be thankful for. I survived 2 decades in prison, okay, and I have a son that wants to be a doctor. You know, my family's coming together. You know, I've been through the classes, the assignment. First I was sent there as a sanction because when I got out of prison, I'm like myself. I can't eye statements here. I dropped the ball because I really didn't even know I had the ball in my hand, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Because a lot of times we don't. If we go to prison at these young ages, you know, only thing we know is really the corner. But there's a few of us on the corner that's a little bit smarter than the average. You know, because we are chicks or whatever, but it still don't mean nothing because you can gain all the knowledge in the world and don't know how to apply it if you ain't got nobody to help you. But from the books I've been reading, dealing with my higher power, you know, it teaches me that there's always going to be somebody in place to help pull us back out of that. You know, back in the book I was reading, they always sent someone to tell the people, this is what we need to do. And I believe communication is the very power that we need to use, because if the voices start coming out, people will stop and listen. You know, they will stop and listen. Action is very important. And then once we begin to teach the men and the women about what we need to do in this action place, and it's going to always come together. But like I said, I'm going to go back to what I said earlier. Just get out of meology and get into neology. It's as simple as that, because we are up against the fight. That's not going to end tomorrow, because you know, all of us coming together and do what we got to do. You know, I believe communication for the men and the women, the Mr. Miyagi's and Mrs. Miyagi's. Please stand up. Please stand up. Please stand up. Don't be afraid of the kids on the corner. You know, do not be afraid of them. They love you. We love you. We respect you. Sometimes we just don't know how, because my homeboy next to me, he did it, so we think it's funny. You know what I mean? But then we have someone to correct them. You know, they're the old because I know when I did something wrong on the corner, I got my butt whooped on the corner by one of them adults, and when I got home, I knew what it was. I got another. And did it keep me from going to prison? No, but I know we've been attacked as a people. And for those that do come out of it, we need to be there to embrace them. First, to appreciate them that they made it through the war. The deep war that they went in, especially being behind the wall. We need to congratulate them for coming through that, first and foremost, my opinion. But I believe that you guys will probably believe that you congratulate them for surviving that. And then you begin to teach them that they've been programmed in them places. And now we learn how to unprogram and then allow them to see their worth, because that's what it took for me. Somebody came and got me by the hand and told me, son, it's going to be okay. If you just listen and get up and show up every day, no matter what, whether you learn something or not, just show up. Find something to do. You just take the trash out. Be the best trash taker out in the world. Do it like you're doing it for your higher power. Do it for him. It's what they taught me. And that's why I'm sitting here today. Because I worked everything as though it was my last and I had to do it for somebody else. Not for me. You know what I mean? Not for the individual in front of me, but for my heart. That gave me the strength to do it because I wanted something in return. So I'm going to leave y'all with that. All the Mr. and Mrs. Miyagi's, please stand up. And it's okay to speak to the ones on the corner because they want to know too. They want love too. And a hug goes a long way.
I agree with Michael completely that in order for the police to regain credibility, they have to have had it in the first place, and I don't believe that they have. I believe that, you know, when a middle-class white person turns on the TV and they see all these black folks mad, shutting down freeways and things like that, they're like, what is going on? The police are so nice to me. The police help me. When I call them, you know, they take care of me. You know, they don't harass me. You know, what are all these people so mad about? They think that we're delusional, that we're all having the same exact delusion. But I can say in my experience, as an Afro-Latino woman who was raised in a poor neighborhood, I did depend on the police. I called them many, many times when I needed them, and they never helped. They never helped. They only made it worse, or they only like criminalized my folks. So the problem with the police is that they are actually the agents of state violence. They are the ones who carry it out. They are the ones who take our folks off of the streets and put them in cages and put them in a system that's not rehabilitative, that's not reformative, that's not transformational. It's just punitive, and it perpetuates violence. So I don't think that the police can regain credibility. What I think needs to happen is that the community needs to stand up, like they have been standing up everywhere. I see them out there, you know, shutting things down and making the presidential candidates talk about Black Lives Matter. And I think that we really need to focus on, like, you know, what Miriam and Gertrude are doing here. You know, what are the alternatives instead of calling the police? You know, how can we look out for our own folks? You know, if I have a conflict with somebody, am I gonna, you know, call the police, or am I gonna call a conflict mediator who can de-escalate it? If I get into a fight with somebody, are we gonna, you know, report it, or are we gonna have a local first responder who is gonna be able to take care of it for us? You know, because I could see it if calling the police would result in something positive, like if they went to jail and then that person somehow became better. But the California prison system has a 67% recidivism rate. That means 2/3 of people who are going in are coming back. I can't think of any other agency that continues to get $10 billion a year with a 67% failure rate. Exactly. How are you going to take somebody, you know, if somebody commits violence or somebody commits harm, and put them in a hyper-violent, hyper-harmful environment, and then send them back into the streets and strip them of all of their opportunities and rights? So I think that what we really need to do is continue conversations like this, support each other, and really just be open-minded and re-envision ways that we can keep our communities safe and that we can prevent harm from happening without relying on the police.
Okay. Yeah. So, how can the police regain credibility? I just think that just tickles me. Yeah. I'm a little bit of a history buff, so whenever I talk, I usually am coming from that vein, and sometimes I lose people and they're like, because I always have my head in, I feel like studying something. But, and what Michael said earlier about the origins of the policing system as we know it, as it's become a permanent entity in society. That is what I've known since I was very young, actually. And it's not only do they come and intimidate oftentimes already marginalized people, but a lot of times they're instigators and aggressors of inter-community disputes and violence as well. A lot of people don't know this, but a lot of they benefit from constant conflict and disputes in marginalized communities. I mean, it's really what helps, put the food on their table. So, I mean, if we all just got around, grabbed each other's hands, started singing Kumbaya, even though we're dealing with, poverty and all this other stuff, they really wouldn't have anything to do. They would probably start getting laid off, even if we weren't, actively saying, pause the calls, even if we weren't proactively making that decision. But if it happened truly organically, that would be a result. Now, if that is combined with direct